Hello and welcome to the Real EFL preview show. It's likely to be the last proper one of the season. My name is Gary Hutchinson. I am your regular host. And before we get started, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and we'll be keeping this excellent content up next season. Today, we are really at the business end. We are looking at those playoff finals, 3 of them scheduled for this weekend. Heartbreak, joy, it's all coming to the fans of Sheffield United, Sunderland, Charlton, Leyton Orient, AFC, Wimbledon, and Walsall. And one man who has seen more of this joy and more of this agony than anybody is our playoff expert, Kyle Keneally. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very, very well, thank you. I've absolutely loved the playoffs. I think I've said many, many times how much I love this all, and I've had the joy of watching pretty much all the games over the past few weeks. There were only a few that I had missed. They were great, particularly the second legs. You tend to think the first leg, are a nervy affair, but this year proved it to be different. But there were some brilliant second legs as well. I got to see 5 of the 6. The only one I missed was Wimbledon's second leg against Notts County, and I will be at 2 of the finals over the weekend as well. So I cannot wait.
Now, just for absolute clarity, when you say you got to see them, we're not talking about you watching them on telly, are we? We're actually talking about you putting the miles in and going to these games.
Yeah, we're talking about some interesting journeys, some 3 o'clock stays in random places. I was even at York on Tuesday night. Yeah, some very late nights getting back from the likes of Charlton at 5 a.m. I think Sunderland was quite late. Coventry involved a little stop in Birmingham Airport at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's the type of things you can only do really while you're sort of my age as a student. Not the type of things I'll be doing in a few years' time. So I'm very, very privileged to do it at the moment while I've got the time. And not the expenses that many other people have currently at the moment. So I know how privileged I've been over the last couple of weeks, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the 2 of the 3 finals over the weekend as well.
Excellent. Now, we haven't scheduled to talk about this at all. We don't talk about the National League on the Real EFL. We do cover it on the website. But pretty exciting stuff. Lots of ex-league teams are in the playoffs. As I understand, I think it is Oldham and Southend in the final. So 2 teams, 2 sets of long-suffering fans who have really been through the ringer. One of those will be coming back to the Football League. York's long wait continues, and Forest Green, and I have to chuckle because anyone who knows me knows that I am not a Forest Green fan. Threw it away at last minute. So which of those 2, just quickly, Oldham and Southend, do you think will be playing league football next season?
I'm going to back Oldham. I think they've been superb in the playoffs. They were 3-0 against Halifax, I think, after 12 minutes, went on to win 4-0 on that game on Tuesday night. I was there at the LNER Community Stadium, and they were just magnificent. The supporters alike as well. They're a really good club that I really, really like. If I hadn't already planned my holiday around football, then I would have been at the playoff final. But unfortunately, I go away on that day, so I will not be at Wembley for Oldham versus Southend. But I wish both teams the best. It is set up to be a really, really good final. As you say, 2 ex-Football League teams, and whoever goes up, I think, will be a really, really welcome addition to League 2 next season.
Yeah, both big clubs. I mean, when you say Southend, I think Championship. When you say not Championship, League One. Sorry, when you say Oldham, obviously they had a massive stay in League One. Certainly could sustain Championship football. So it's really, from a neutral's point of view, a final that nobody's going to lose, because whichever team go up, you're going to go, yeah, I'm pleased to see them go back up, and hopefully whichever one doesn't next season can launch a real sustained attack on the top spot. I think the National League is as open as it's ever been. Now with the likes of Wrexham, certainly over the last few years, with the likes of Wrexham and Stockport and Chesterfield all gone, there's always been an obvious winner or an obvious kind of top team, whereas I don't think there will be that next season. So really, really exciting stuff. Now, is it exciting stuff for Notts County next season? They were certainly considered to be a forerunner for promotion. After Luke Williams left, Stuart Maynard came in. He had the luxury of Macaulay Longstaff and Jody Jones and managed to take them from automatic promotion out of the playoffs. This season, David McGoldrick, free scoring, Alessandro Jatta, free scoring, and unfortunately they failed once again. He has now paid for that with his job. We talk about big clubs. Notts County certainly now, certainly the biggest in League Two now. Bradford have gone, one of the biggest grounds. Or what did you make of the sacking?
I think there was no surprise. I think they were really unfortunate in the playoffs. That first leg at Meadow Lane, they were much the better side. We'll get on to Wimbledon in a bit, but they were magnificent defensively. And the game was really decided. I know, obviously, Wimbledon went 1-0 up, but it was sort of decided in stoppage time with McGoldrick limping off injured, Jatta being sent off. They lost basically their two key attacking players. And I know Jatta hasn't been in great goal scoring form this year. He's been without a goal, I think, for quite a long time. But it really, really mattered. They went to a ground that Wimbledon had played and had been really, really good at this season. And if you go back to their early season form, they were magnificent at home. So I don't think they really stood a chance. And obviously Wimbledon saw the game out, another clean sheet. And yeah, you look at a side as well that we're going into the final game of the season with an outside chance of automatic promotion. They've just been a bit too hit and miss at times. And I know that those problems existed last season as well when they were really free scoring, but they were equally as bad defensively. They sorted some of them issues out, but they still had a squad that was really, really full of quality this year. And they've once again underachieved. And they've got a really big decision over the summer now. As I said, it's a decision that I pretty much expected to happen. I know a lot of the fans have been assuming would come in the next few weeks. So now it's a really big decision to see who comes in next at Notts County.
Yeah, it's a big job. I think the current betting market sees the assistant João Alves as the favourite, but you've also got Luke Williams tipped for a return. Des Buckingham is up there, and looking at the latest odds, Tom Cleverley as well, which I think would be quite ambitious given they didn't do a terrible job at Watford. If you were a Notts County fan, just before we get started properly on the playoffs, who would you be liking to see come back?
Well, I think Luke Williams is always the obvious name to go for. The fact you said Tom Cleverley and that, I know it's only betting markets and it's very, very early days, but that would certainly be a very interesting one. But I cannot see him dropping down to League Two yet. I think he's certainly a Championship manager at the very least. He's obviously been dealt a tough hand at Watford, as pretty much every manager has under the last 10 or so years. But I think any of them names really linked would do a good job next season. And it's a really big summer as well. To see who they can keep hold of and go into next season. Hopefully, they've got the foundations sorted in terms of defence. Have been a lot better. It's just keeping hold of sort of their key attacking players and going again next season.
Yeah, one team that will have to go again next season. We don't know which one. Will be either Sheffield United or Sunderland. One of them will be heading to the promised lands of the Premier League. Sheffield United have been there, of course, most recently. Sunderland probably a little more synonymous with the Premier League than their counterparts from the Steel City. It's going to be fascinating. Finally, a team who play in red and white are guaranteed a place in the Premier League via the playoffs. I think there's only been two teams who play in red and white who have ever been promoted through the playoffs, one of those being Sunderland, and I think the other one is Brentford. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. You were probably at all of those games. It's the rightful playoff final because it's Sheffield United in third versus Sunderland in fourth, and along with Leeds and Burnley, these have been the four best teams in the Championship. According to that, Sheffield United would be the team that we would be tipping, but as we know, they are all too familiar with playoff heartbreak. Do you think they can finally end their record of being the worst team in the history of playoffs and probably put Lincoln there instead?
Yeah, they would put Lincoln there instead. Yeah, I do actually. I think they will win tomorrow afternoon. They've not won at Wembley since 1925. I think it's been 100 years since they've won under the arch. Obviously, that was well before the new Wembley was built. They've got a horrible, horrible record in the playoffs. 9 failed attempts. It's the longest sequence without winning one in the competition's history. And Sunderland are only marginally better, as I will mention in a minute. Sheffield United obviously finished the regular season 14 points ahead of Sunderland. According to Opta, that is the biggest difference between two finalists in the current formats. This is since 1988 to 89 season. And both of these clubs actually spent longer in the top two than Burnley did throughout the season. Obviously, Sunderland were up there at the start of the season. They had a really good start. They tailed off. I think it was that Leeds victory, the victory for Leeds, that really killed them. And it was the victory for the Whites at Bramall Lane that looked like it would secure the title. Obviously, it was a really compelling championship season. Sheffield United responded. I think by the end of March they were back towards the top again. They put in a really, really good performance against Coventry, and it all looked like from there that it was going to be a real fascinating battle for the top 2 places. They had them losses in a row though that really killed them off, and by the time they lost against Burnley, it finished the automatic promotion race. But they obviously had a really, really good playoff campaign. 3-0 both times against Bristol City. There was the controversial red card, which of all the playoff decisions that has had controversy surrounding it, I think it was the one that was correct, to be honest. It was the ex-Lincoln boy, Rob Dickey, who committed the foul. But I think it was a red card, to be honest. He was last man. I don't think he makes an attempt to play the ball. And in all honesty, I think it was the correct decision. And from then on, Sheffield United hadn't been too good on the night, but putting a good performance. Obviously, going back to Bramwell Lane winning 3-0, they were never really going to let it slip. They had a couple of nervy moments early on, but fully deserved getting into the final. And after their season, it was certainly what everyone I think's expected. So yeah, I think they will go on and win the final against Sunderland, but it's sure to be a really, really good game tomorrow.
So you've already said that you think Sheffield United are going to win the final, so it pretty much makes my next question irrelevant, but there we go. One thing I'll say, I had this misconception of Sunderland kind of desperately clinging on, really good run of form, but they've been really poor, I think, towards the end of the season, a really bad run, despite having what you could say is probably a youthful and star-laden team. But Regis Lebree will obviously be something of a hero at Sunderland, just for restoring a little bit of pride, because ever since Netflix cameras set up, they've been something of a laughing stock, and it's only been the last 2 seasons really where they've recovered that. They don't really fare much better than Sheffield United in the playoffs, as Lincoln City fans know, of course, because we managed to beat them over 2 legs, which was absolutely wonderful. The Black Cats did win at the playoffs 3 years ago to be promoted from League One. I've said, you said Sheffield United are going to win, but can you see any sort of situation where Sunderland are a Premier League side next season?
Yeah, this is no foregone conclusion. And as you've mentioned there, Sunderland are almost as bad. They're 1 win from 8. So that means it's 1 win from 17 between these two. So they're both very, very poor in the playoffs. But yeah, I certainly think I was really impressed by them. I got to watch both legs, as I mentioned. Certainly that first leg, they put in the exact perfect performance you'd want away from home. Coventry had pretty much the better of everything, bar the scoreline, and they capitalised on that really poor error late on in my end, scoring the winner. Obviously, the second leg, Coventry had to take the game to Sunderland. They didn't get their early goal. Sunderland that would have really put the game out of sight. Mason Clark scoring with 14 minutes to play, taking it to extra time. I just feel that Coventry ran out of steam a little bit, but I still never saw the goal coming from Sunderland. It was exceptional. I've never seen something like that. Dan Ballard scoring in literally the last second of the game. It was in the 121st minute, and the 59th second is as late as you could ever imagine. It was just sensational, and I'm so happy that Sunderland are in this final as well. You've got to feel for Coventry just quickly over the last few years with the disappointment they've had. Obviously, Sunderland's last playoff campaign was against Luton. Luton knocked them out. They went on to play Coventry in the final and beat them. Coventry then losing last season in the FA Cup semi-final. And then this year as well, losing the last minute. It's been 3 years of horrible heartbreak at the very last in every single situation. As I say, though, Sunderland, I can really see giving Sheffield United a really good game. They went into the playoffs in awful form. They'd sort of been set here for a while. This situation had sort of been sorted for them. They were pretty set inside the playoffs, but they lost their last 5 in a row. They had a couple of injuries, obviously trying out sort of new things before the playoffs, but they obviously got over the line. I think a lot of people before said that it'd be really difficult to recover from that sort of form going into the playoffs, but they've proved that it is not impossible to do. And I think they will give Sheffield United a really good game. I can just see the Blades coming out on top, though.
Now, you won't remember this because you weren't born. 27 years ago on Sunday, Sunderland were involved in what has been described as the greatest playoff final of all time. Do you know what the score was, Kyle, in that game?
Was it 4-4?
It was indeed 4-4. Yeah. So they played Charlton Athletic. a certain Clive Mendonca, who went on to play for Grimsby, and I'll not boo, give Charlton a 1-0 lead at half-time. Then Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips put Sunderland 2-1 up. Mendonca then equalised. Quinn then scored again for Sunderland, put them 3-2 up. Rufus equalised. Sunderland then scored again through Nicky Summerby, only for Mendonca to equalise, and Mickey Gray missed the penalty. So I'm sure if they score 4 at Wembley this weekend, there'll be a Premier League team next season. And that leads me nicely onto their opponents from that 1998 game. Look at you grimaced there at that segue, Kyle.
I grinned.
You literally grimaced.
That was a grin.
So their opponents on that day in 1998 were Charlton Athletic, and they are themselves going to be in a playoff final this weekend. It's an all-London affair between Charlton Athletic under Nathan Jones and Leyton Orient under Richie Wellens. It's 4th versus 6th in the table. Leyton Orient, the only side who have got through to a playoff final who have not finished directly below the automatic promotion places, which is interesting if you are a member of the Dull Man's Club. Richie Wellens, also the manager, widely regarded as the best performing in League One this season by overperforming their budget place. I believe it's by 8 places, and the second most impressive manager is Michael Scabala at Lincoln City, who has overperformed by 6 places. But there we go, we'll shoehorn that in. Promises to be a massive game between the London haves and the London have-nots, I think, in real terms. Charlton will be expecting a return to the Championship. Orient weren't expecting to be in the top 6, I don't think, all this season. Now, the Addicks did edge, we're talking about dull, they edged what was the dullest semi-final of probably all of them against Wycombe, who, let's face it, are involved in quite a lot of dull moments over the course of the season. But do you see them turning on the style in this all-London capital affair?
Yeah, I certainly think they'll be better than the performances they put in over the semi-final. I think that is certainly in part to Wycombe. They've become massively associated with games that have not been particularly pleasant on the eye over the last few years. And they've obviously had Gareth Ainsworth there. You look at Mike Dodds coming in, not perhaps doing the greatest of jobs. I think they've been real hit and miss this season. They were really good in the early parts of the season. But yeah, if we turn to Charlton, the semi-final, obviously goalless in the first leg. The second leg, I didn't actually watch most of the first leg because I was at Chesterfield instead by the time I got back, which I think was probably a good thing, to be honest, missing most of it by what I've seen since and read. The second leg wasn't particularly much better, and it's a very, very fitting winner. 8 minutes from time, Matty Godden scoring. I was very, very happy, by the way, because I thought it was quite a close connection if this game had gone to extra time and penalties to make a coach back that got me back to Meadowhall, I think, at about 3:30 in the morning. And then I had a lovely hour's walk in the sunrise on Friday morning. But yeah, I will not bore everyone with my extremely long journeys over the last few weeks. Charlton have been really, really good over the second half of the season, and they've really turned on the style. I think they've only lost once in their last 5. That was against Wrexham, who secured promotion. Obviously, Charlton had the chance to sneak into the automatic promotion places, which they didn't manage. They'd have had to have got a result in that game, which they didn't. They've only lost 4 games since the turn of the year. They've been really difficult to beat, and they've already done the double over Leyton Orient this season as well. So they'll certainly feel confident. They've sold out their allocation. They've sold out the extension of their allocation. I think most people looking at this game are probably expecting a Charlton win, but I do think it will be a lot closer, and I genuinely cannot call this game. I'm really, really excited for this one.
Now, Leyton Orient don't have a great record in Wembley finals in the playoffs themselves. They've only appeared in one League One playoff final. That was in 2014, where they lost to Rotherham United on penalties. They have a slightly better record in playoff finals in League Two, but they beat Wrexham 2-1 in 1989. But that was when it was a 2-legged final. So that was at the racecourse from Brisbane. Since then, they lost in 1999 to Scunthorpe United and 2001 to Blackpool. So they don't have a fantastic record. second tier football hasn't graced E10 in more than 40 years. The Orient are now potentially 90 minutes away from ending that wait. Do you think that there's any way they can utilise their underdog status to emerge victorious here?
I would love it if they did, to be honest. You referenced the final there back in 2014, and that's where I'll start, because it was sort of the turning point. Leyton Orient went 2-0 up in that final. I think Alex Ravel scored at least once. It may have been two. I know he scored a ridiculous goal at Wembley, and they went on to win on penalties, did Rotherham that day. And then from that point on, Leyton Orient had a big drop-off. They dropped into League Two, then into the National League. Obviously, there was all the stuff around the ownership for years with Leyton Orient. Took a couple of years to get back into the Football League, which is a lot quicker than some teams have done it in, particularly Lincoln and many of the other sort of bigger clubs to drop into the National League over the last few years. And they had a couple of mid-table campaigns in League Two. They obviously won the title in very, very good style a few years ago. They had a mid-table campaign last year back in League One. They flirted with the playoffs a little bit. And then their story this season is just magnificent as well. If you've seen Gab Sutton's stuff on Twitter, I think he backed them to be in the playoffs when they were just outside the relegation zone. They had a really awful start to the season, picking up just 8 points from their opening 11 games. They were only one place above the bottom four. They had a ridiculous December, though, keeping a clean sheet in every game across all competitions, I believe. 12 wins from 15 as well. They looked certain for a playoff place, but they hit poor form at the worst time, lost 5 on the bounce, and they were 7 points adrift of 6th place. And despite all this, they won 6 games in a row to end the season. Obviously, Reading have had their fair share as well of bad ownership over the last couple of years, and it was a really, really fascinating race for that final playoff spot, but Orient just edged it. They hammered Huddersfield, on the final day of the season to get in there, and then beating the side Stockport County, who finished third over the 2 legs. That was a really, really good first leg. It was one of them I didn't attend, and I was quite gutted, to be honest. There was a massive amount of controversy around that. Obviously, Charlie Kelman's opener, where he was a mile offside. He could have been in a different postcode. I think he was probably quite close to Wembley, given how far he was offside that day. But the second leg as well, a very, very good tie. And Leyton Orient just about edging it on penalties. Really, really good overall. I would love them to go on and win the final on Sunday afternoon. I think they fully deserve it. And to be fair, whichever club goes up, it'll be quite nice, to be honest. For many of the neutrals, there'll be one club in London next season playing in League One. So that means at least one trip to the capital, and potentially 2, depending on who prevails in Wimbledon versus Walsall.
I'm pleased you've done that for me, because I was struggling for a segue. Now, I have actually found one. There's an interesting stat that neither Wimbledon nor Walsall have ever lost a playoff final that they have made. Now, Walsall have failed in the playoffs. So they were failures in the playoffs in 2016 when they went out in the semi-finals and Barnsley ended up beating Bradford, but they won against Reading in 2001. And then here's the link: in 1988, Notts County and Sheffield United, both teams that we're talking about, were the semi-finalists that were beaten. Walsall beat Notts County, Bristol City beat Sheffield United over 2 legs at Ashton Gate and the Old Fellows Park. It was 3-3. And then David Kelly scored a hat-trick to see Walsall beat Bristol City 4-0 to earn promotion. He actually scored 5 goals across the 2 games. So there's my super smooth segue. This probably isn't the final that a lot of people were predicting, given Walsall's poor form and given the fact that Wimbledon seemed able to beat the teams above them and not below them, and the further they got up the table, that meant there were fewer teams above them. But their incredible defence has been the talk of the League Two playoffs. And do you think that that's a factor for the Wombles in what is going to be a really tight encounter?
Yeah, I don't expect this to be massively free scoring. I know Walsall had a great attacking record during the first part of the season, and we'll obviously get onto them in a minute. But yeah, Wimbledon have been really, really good defensively. 6 straight clean sheets, and to keep clean sheets in both playoff games is equally impressive, particularly given the attacking prowess of Notts County. Owen Goodman was sensational in that first leg. I think Grant could have had a hat-trick on another day for Notts County. it just wasn't their day. And Riley Harbottle as well, keeping the ball out at one end and scoring the crucial goal at the other end. And I know that would have been particularly sweet for him, given he was an ex-Forest Academy lad as well. I know there's not a massive rivalry these days between Forest and County, but I know it will certainly been very, very sweet. And then Josh Newville, the score in the second leg, it pretty much killed it really early on. I got back from Walsall the night before at 1 a.m. I think I had a very nice sleep that day, catching up on sleep. And then I got up and watched this game and thinking that pretty much it was all over after the first leg. And I was deemed right straight away. As I say, 8 minutes into the game, Wimbledon scoring. And I thought there was no way back for Notts County from that point on. And I was pretty disappointed with their display, to be honest. And they didn't really threaten Wimbledon from that point on. And that is obviously expected when you look at their defensive record. 35 goals against over the regular season, 10 better than Bradford. I know obviously the talk has been Burnley and Leeds in the Championship and how good they've been defensively, but going down to League Two, Wimbledon have been just as good. Perhaps not in the statistics as such, but they've been excellent. The only reason they haven't been automatically promoted is probably going forward, scoring only 56. Matty Stevens has scored 17 of them, so that works out as 30%. But he's not been firing particularly recently. But if they keep clean sheets out, you only need the odd goal. And I think it will be one goal that separates these two teams in the final. I don't know in which direction. I've got to be honest. Like I say, it's been a very, very tight final as well. But I certainly don't think it will be high scoring.
And curiously, Walsall have twice, as I've just said, been promoted through the playoffs. Twice they've won the final that they've got to. They've never won a Wembley playoff final. One of their wins, as mentioned, was at their home ground, Fellows Park, and the other one was during the Millennium Stadium era when the new Wembley was being built. So they haven't won a Wembley final. Wimbledon are the only team out of these two who have won a Wembley final. Playoff final, but 2025 will come back out of history, which is where I seem to like to live on these podcasts. 2025 has been dominated by the Saddlers' complete and utter implosion. I think they led by 12 points at one point. They were absolutely nailed on for promotion. They tumbled down the division, and then on the final day they took that hammer blow, the last minute goal against Bradford, costing them automatic promotion. To bounce back from that and to beat a Chesterfield side who snuck into the playoffs through a good run of form at the end of the season over two legs showed some absolute resilience. Do you think there's any way that they can clinch the promotion that they looked so nailed on for earlier in the season?
It just really depends which Walsall side turn up. If it's the side that have played in the playoffs so far, as you say, I was really, really impressed. The mental setback of losing promotion, how they did, not only the fact of how much they dropped off throughout the season, and the fact they were still in the automatic promotion places for so long before they eventually dropped out, and then to literally be there pretty much at the final part of the season, then Bradford to go up as they did, it requires massive mental resilience to overcome that. And I thought they looked really impressive actually in the playoffs. The first leg wasn't the greatest of games. They got the penalty, got the goal, the second that they needed, and then pretty much sat back and Chesterfield couldn't break them down. They had a couple of chances. But the second leg as well, all it really needed was one goal from Chesterfield. I think Walsall's last home win actually was against Chesterfield back in February. So as much as they've won a couple of games away from home recently, the Poundland Bescott Stadium has not been the greatest place for them. But to perform as they did, to get that sort of late-ish goal. I know Chesterfield equalised, and then you had the inevitable pitch invasion when Walsall scored again, which pretty soured everything, to be honest. I think Paul Cook didn't really want the game to go on after that. But listen, Walsall have been really good over the two legs to get to this position, to be in the final. As I say, requires great mental strength. And I think if one side are going to overcome what has happened throughout the season, it is going to be Walsall. It just feels that we've been here before in terms of getting to the last moment, and this is it for them. I don't know who is going to come out on top. It is genuinely a really, really fascinating game. If I had to pick a side, I'm going to go for Wimbledon, but I would not be surprised whoever comes up, to be honest. It is a really, really intriguing final.
Now, I have again trawled the annals of history to find the biggest winning margins of each of the finals. Now, I know that it's not particularly a game I'm sure that you will want to play, so I'll just go into it myself. So the biggest winning margin of the Championship final, and I'm only talking about games at New Wembley, so from 2007 onwards, so I'm not talking Millennium Stadium and that sort of thing. The biggest winning margin in the Championship has only been by 2 goals. That's 4-2 Swansea and Reading, 2-0 Norwich and Middlesbrough, 2-0 Brentford and Swansea. So one of those was a red and white side. Do you have any idea what the biggest winning margin in League One and League Two is? It's the same.
1, I would say, by your sort of tone, but I don't know.
In 2015, Preston beat Swindon 4-0 in the League One playoff final. 4-0. And in 2020, Northampton beat Exeter City 4-0 in the playoff final. So that's only the New Wembley. In single games, and this is an answer that absolutely pains me, in single games at all stadiums, so at Wembley, Old Trafford, Millennium Stadium, there's only ever been one team who has scored 5 goals in a playoff final inside a 90-minute game. Any guesses?
Was it Bournemouth?
I'll tell you what, let's switch it around. Yeah, I was going to say, any guesses who it was against?
Yes, it was against Lincoln, unfortunately.
I do kind of want Sheffield United to go up so that we have that worst playoff team ever kind of tag, because that would be really offensive to Sunderland and it would be offensive to Macclesfield and it would be offensive to Scunthorpe that they all lost playoff ties to the worst ever playoff team. So there we go. That was the real EFL playoff special. Which 2 games are you going to, Kyle? Which 2 finals?
There is the Saturday and the Sunday. I've actually got a ticket still for the Monday game, but I'm doing a lifeguard course next week. That means I'm unable to attend and I'm unable to send my ticket back to Wimbledon at the moment. So if there is anyone who would like an adult ticket and a young ticket for the final, be my guest. Get in touch because I've got 2 tickets there for anyone who wants it.
Brilliant. Very good. So Kyle's going to do a lifeguard course, and fans of Sheffield United, Sunderland, Charlton, Leyton Orient, Wimbledon, Walsall will hope things go swimmingly for them this weekend. But obviously the losers will need pulling out of deep water to recover for next season. I can see that Kyle loves that. We have been Real EFL Podcast. Kyle, thank you so much for all your input this season. We may do some transfer specials over the summer. We shall have to see, but hopefully you enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much.
So that was the Real EFL preview show with me, Gary Hutchinson. Please remember, if you did like this content, to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, to do whatever else needs to be done to push us up those algorithms. We will hopefully be with you over the summer covering all of the main events, but we'll take a couple of weeks break. Now, hopefully, if your team are in the playoff finals, you'll have a little bit more luck than whenever my team have been in the playoff final, including the year they wore that shirt above me, signed, by the way, up there by Europa League winner Brennan Johnson. But unfortunately, even he couldn't pull Lincoln City out of the playoff despair. Hopefully, at least 3 of those teams who go through won't need their fans pulling out of the playoff despair. 3 of you will. Suck it up. You get used to it eventually. Trust me, from what will be officially the worst playoff team in history, Lincoln City. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the weekend. Goodbye.